Let's jump right in the first photo, the Tinder date. People have mixed opinions about Tinder, but I think the majority of us agree that it's not the best place to go looking for long-lasting relationships. Still, millions of people use the app for hookups and dates all the time. Problem is, when you're interacting with someone through a screen, you don't really know who you are talking to. It's easy to forget that the person you're talking to is still a complete stranger, and agreeing to meet that stranger is unfortunately not completely risk-free. This is the story of a New Zealander called Warina Wright. It was August of 2014. Warina was in Australia for a friend's wedding. The Gold Coast was providing her with both sun and sea, but something was missing. She wanted to go out with a guy she matched with a guy on Tinder that she thought was cute. Gable Tosti, a self-proclaimed Gold Coast playboy. The pair met up and Marina agreed to go back to his apartment alone, a decision that would cost her her life. This is the last image taken of Warina while she was still alive. Audio recordings found on Tosti's phone revealed that she was begging for him to let her go home. Tosti refused to let her leave, saying, "You've been a bad girl," later in the recordings. Choking sounds could be heard, as if Warina was being strangled. At various other points, he threatens to beat her up and push her over the edge of his balcony on the 14th floor. Well, the exact events of that night remain unclear, but at some point during the early hours, Warina either fell or was thrown from Tosti's apartment's balcony. Her body was apparently folded over on itself. There were indeed red marks around her neck, indicative of strangulation. It was originally alleged that Warina was so scared of her date and that she tried to climb down from the building to escape him. After she fell, Tosti called up his father and asked him, "Why does this keep happening to me?" CCTV footage showed him walking around outside the apartment, eating a slice of Domino's pizza only 5 minutes after Warina's death. Tosti's legal team managed to convince the jury that he had done nothing wrong. Her death was not Mr. Tosti's fault, since he had used a reasonable force to subdue her after she became aggressive. The fact that she fell was her own fault. Ultimately, he was found not guilty of both murder and manslaughter. Not satisfied with the result, the coroner reopened the case in 2016, and that's where things stand today. This next story centers on a young woman named Kaylee Muthart. Kaylee was known for being a high-achieving and good student, even being a member of the National Honor Society. However, at 17, Kaylee left school due to a combination of external issues that caused her grades to decline. These issues included her heart arrhythmia and long working hours to save up for a car. According to Kaylee, she believed taking a break from school was the best option to salvage her academic record and still obtain a college scholarship. By the time Kaylee turned 18, she began to change. She started drinking alcohol and smoking weed. Kaylee mentioned that her family had a history of addiction to these substances, making her believe she might be prone to it as well. Kaylee is a Christian, and one day, while smoking marijuana with a friend, she felt an unusual closeness to God. She believed the weed was laced with something stronger. Shortly after, Kaylee also lost her job. It's unclear if she was fired or quit on her own. Her relationship with her boyfriend also began to deteriorate. To cope with the stress, Kaylee turned to other substances, including Xanax. Around this time, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Kaylee explained that this made sense because she felt extremely happy when she was up and deeply depressed when she was down. Fast forward to August of that year, Kaylee continued to battle depression and recalled the euphoric feeling she had with the laced joint. This led her to seek out that feeling again. This resulted in Kaylee trying methamphetamine, leading to several sleepless days and disturbing hallucinations. For instance, she saw oddities in her face in the mirror and picked at her skin until she bled. After this, Kaylee continued to struggle with her mental health and trying other harder substances. Ultimately, she did experiment with other drugs while still studying the Bible, which played a role in her hallucinations. By November and December, Kaylee's circle of friends mainly consisted of addicts. Her family tried to help her and even attempted to get her into rehab, but it never happened. She moved from house to house, struggling with substance abuse. Then, on the night of February 5th, 2018, Kaylee took a significantly larger dose of methamphetamine. The next morning, on the 6th, she began to hallucinate. From piecing together her memories and witness accounts, Kaylee believed this is what happened. The friend she was staying with was not home, so Kaylee thought she had gone to church. Kaylee walked along a train track leading to the church. Despite it being 10:30 a.m., everything appeared dark to her, and in this darkness, she saw a light with a white bird resting atop it. This prompted Kaylee to believe she needed to make a sacrifice to the world, thinking it was a request from God. She believed if she didn't sacrifice something, everyone she knew would die. The sacrifice ended up being her eyes, and she was utterly convinced the scenario was real. She collapsed to her knees, cried out, "Why me?" and proceeded to remove her eyes. Of course, I can't show the real photos here on YouTube, so if you want to see them yourself, you can Google them. A pastor from a nearby church saw her and rushed to restrain her from causing more harm. Kaylee was immediately taken to the hospital, where what remained of her eyes was removed to prevent any infection and salvage her optic nerves. She was unconscious for 2 days, and upon waking, she realized she was blind and understood why. Kaylee then planned to attend 90 Narcotics Anonymous meetings in 90 days. After being discharged from the hospital, she said, "It took losing my sight to get me back on the right path, but from the bottom of my heart, I'm so glad I'm here." The person shown on the screen is Issei Segawa, also known as Pang, a notorious figure in Japan. Standing at only 4'9", he may be small in stature, but his personality is anything but. His infamy peaked between 1986 and 1997, during which time he frequently appeared on Japanese television as a guest speaker and commentator. He also starred in horror films and authored best-selling cookbooks. But this man had a very dark secret. He liked the idea to eat other people. Segawa was a real-life cannibal. In 1981, while studying in Paris, he invited his classmate, Renee Hartevelt, a 25-year-old Dutch woman, to help translate poetry for an assignment. She agreed, and while she was reading a poem at a desk in his apartment, Segawa shot her in the back of the neck with a hunting rifle. He then proceeded to have his way with her remains, with the ultimate plan of consuming her body. Segawa saw himself as short, weak, and unattractive, while Renee was tall, beautiful, and vibrant. He believed that by eating her, he could absorb all her energy. Finding her raw flesh difficult to eat, he went to a local store, bought a butcher's knife, and began slicing parts of her body to cook. He consumed most of her face and chest, taking photos at each stage of his grotesque dining experience. He stored some of her remains in his refrigerator for later, while placing the rest into 2 suitcases, which he attempted to dump in a lake. He was caught red-handed, and the officers discovered parts of Renee's body inside the suitcases. Segawa's wealthy parents hired a top lawyer for him, enabling him to avoid jail time by being declared legally insane. He was held in a French hospital, but a Japanese author's story about him sparked a morbid curiosity in Japan. He gained a macabre celebrity status, which likely influenced the French authorities' decision to deport him to Japan. Once there, he was quickly deemed sane, and I don't know how, but with no charges against him, he checked himself out of the hospital and remains a free man to this day, having never served prison time. The photo of Segawa you're looking at was featured on the cover of a well-known Japanese magazine, Spa, which included an article where he reviewed a restaurant, a rather tasteless choice given his notoriety. Segawa also wrote a best-selling book detailing his crime against Renee. Certainly not a book for the faint-hearted, as it explicitly describes his actions. The idea that he is still allowed to walk around freely with these kinds of crimes makes me sick. He should pay for what he did with that poor girl. But life isn't always fair, and unfortunately things like this happen. This is the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, check out my channel or click on the video at the top left. Until next time.